This is Peer Teach problem A. Your job here is to look at the diagram and determine if the image is a parallelogram and be able to explain why or why not. Note the diagrams are not drawn to scale. Be very careful with the markings here. You should be looking at this page in your reference booklet. What proves a parallelogram? And there's 6 different ways. The first 5 are just the converse of the OCD. We just did this. The last way is to prove that one set of sides are both parallel and congruent, the same set of sides. That's number 6. Taking a look at here. This first one, we have one set of sides are parallel, and the other set of sides are congruent. Now, this looks like it might be a parallelogram, but if you look carefully, these markings, watch, those are parallel, aren't they? These are congruent, aren't they? But that shape there is not a parallelogram. It's an isosceles trapezoid. So is this shape necessarily a parallelogram? The answer is no. Why? Because it could be an isosceles trapezoid. Let's take a look at the next one. What do the markings say? The marking says that these two sides are parallel. And then here, these angles are congruent. Well, this may not seem like it's a parallelogram, but if these angles are congruent, that means we have armpits of the Z going on, and that means these purple sides have to be parallel. Notice we now have opposite sides are parallel, and that is the very first qualification. Opposite sides are parallel. So we have here a parallelogram. So the answer is a yes. Why? Because opposite sides are parallel. Let's take a look at the other two. Now, we noticed here, taking a look, that something about diagonals, if the diagonals bisect each other. Now, what that would look like would be this. Let's draw ourselves a parallelogram. If the diagonals actually did bisect each other, let's draw one diagonal blue and the other diagonal green. If the diagonals bisect each other, that means that point in the middle cuts the green in half, and that point in the middle cuts the blue in half. Notice how the hatch marks have to match on either side. That would mean the diagonals bisect each other. But watch very carefully, the hatch marks do not match on either side. Instead, consecutive segments are congruent. So what could this be? This is not a parallelogram. Instead, watch very carefully. That's the middle right there. This could be an isosceles trapezoid. Notice in an isosceles trapezoid, the diagonals do not bisect each other, but these two pieces would be equal, and these two pieces would be equal if it is an isosceles trapezoid. So why is it not a parallelogram? It could be an isosceles trapezoid. Let's take a look at this last one. Right here, these angles are congruent, and these angles are congruent. Now, we're told for have a parallelogram that opposite angles must be congruent. But take a look here. We are not told here that these opposite angles are congruent, going both directions. Instead, what we have here is these two angles here are equal to each other, and then these purple angles are equal to each other. So again, you ask yourself, could this be any other shape? And the answer is a yes. It could be another shape. Let me draw it for you. This could be a kite. Watch carefully. So we see here, if you had a kite, these two angles would be equal to each other, and then these angles would be equal to each other, but it would not be a parallelogram. So this would be a no. Why? Because it could be a kite.